Welcome, interpersonal students. Today we're going to learn about theories of relationship development. We are now in the relationships section of our online module. Before we were studying the frameworks of just interpersonal communication generally. Then we looked at conversation and how all of that worked and how we can be better conversationalists. And now we're going a little bit more macro. Now we're talking about personal relationships. We're going to start with how relationships form. Then we're going to talk about maintenance in some later lectures. And then in the next module, we're going to talk about relationship dissolution. So we're going to talk about the whole life cycle of relationships. But today, we're going to start with three theories of relationship development. The first theory we're going to learn about is uncertainty reduction theory. As the title implies, this theory is a theory about, as the title implies, one of the first things uncertainty we need to talk about before we go into one thing we should probably define right away, just as we talk about this theory, is what is uncertainty? Is basically uncertainty the best way to think of it, anyways. Uncertainty. We think an interactant we think that our partner might behave. So it's number of ways or possibilities for our perception of someone's behavior. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, here's the idea. When you run into a stranger, you don't know anything about them. So you don't know how they're going to talk. You don't know what their beliefs are. You don't know if they're nice. You don't know if they're friendly. You know absolutely nothing about this stranger. Because you don't know how they're going to act, you don't know how they think, you don't know how they talk, you don't even know if they speak the same language as you, there's a lot of uncertainty because there's a number of possible ways that you can perceive this person acting because you know nothing about them. The possibilities are endless. But as you get to know the stranger and you learn, okay, the stranger's name is Rick and he's 47 years old and he's kind of quiet and he hates sushi. Okay, so we can start narrowing down some of the behaviors that we know Rick wouldn't do at the very least. So we know Rick would not eat sushi. We would probably say because Rick is 46 years old, he probably doesn't play under 16 youth soccer. Okay, so we know that. These other things that as we get to know Rick, we can start ruling out possibilities that we think Rick would not be capable of. Now, it's interesting because sometimes we think that somebody wouldn't do something and then they in fact do it. And then that, if you remember from the first lecture, that might be an expectancy violation. So this is where EVT starts to come into play. So even though we think we get to know someone, they end up exceeding or causing some kind of violation, either positively or negatively. And then we're like, oh, I guess 46-year-old men do still play basketball really well or whatever. If like Rick turned out to be good at basketball. So, but uncertainty generally is basically the number of ways or possibilities that we perceive someone's behavior could be. The more you get to know someone, the more you know what they are, but also what they're not. Now, there are two types of uncertainty. First, there's cognitive uncertainty. Cognitive uncertainty is the degree of uncertainty that you have about another person's beliefs, okay, so beliefs, attitudes, and not only of the other person, but the self and other. So here's what we mean. You can have cognitive uncertainty about what your partner believes, about what the stranger believes. I don't know what this person believes. I don't know how they feel about things. I don't know what they think of me. I don't know how this person feels about me. But you can also have cognitive uncertainty within yourself. I don't know how I feel about this person. I don't know what my beliefs are about this issue. So cognitive uncertainty then is uncertainty about beliefs and attitudes both on the partner and both on yourself. You might have been in some, relational circumstance where maybe you liked the person, but you don't know if they liked you in return. So you still have cognitive uncertainty. You're certain about your own beliefs, but you're not certain about their beliefs. Or vice versa. Maybe they were certain about you, but you weren't certain about them. Like you weren't sure how you thought of them. Okay, so that's cognitive uncertainty. The next is behavioral. And behavioral uncertainty has to do with the other person's behaviors. Okay, so their behaviors, their actions. in a particular situation. So you can have uncertainty about what this person does, or uncertainty about a past action. So this can be past behaviors. Like, I have no idea why my friend called me at 3 o'clock in the morning yesterday. I didn't answer, but it's really strange why they would do that. Or it can be like a present behavior. I don't know what they would do in this circumstance. Or in the future, I don't know what my partner would do if I asked them to do X, if they would get mad or if they would be happy. Okay, so that's all behavioral uncertainty. There's too many possibilities for you to feel confident that a specific one will occur. There's not enough predictability is basically uncertainty. I don't know how to predict this. And of course, this can also be self or other related too. I don't know how to act in this situation based on how my partner act. Okay, it might be a particular case of behavioral uncertainty. So one of the ideas is this, and this is kind of like an early takeaway. Part of what a good relationship should do, at least if you're trying to keep your partner in the relationship or you're trying to build a relationship with someone, is you want to create some level of certainty with your partner. A lot of problems are rooted in uncertainty because your partner isn't certain enough. So if you're trying to maintain a relationship, try to keep your partner certain. Now, here's the thing. With uncertainty, we're not always driven to reduce uncertainty. So one of the ideas of uncertainty reduction theory is that when you run into someone and there's conditions that are met, you'll be driven to reduce uncertainty about this person. So what are these conditions? Okay, so there are three. First, there has to be potential for rewards and costs. Okay, and that's not light enough, so let me change that to something. No, that's not good. All right, experimenting with colors. Okay, I like that green. Does everyone like that green? Do you like that green? Yes, Dr. Yu. Okay, yes, let's do green. Okay. All right, so we're going to do green here. So potential for costs and rewards. I don't know if I like this green now. Okay, so we're going to go back again. I think I'm going to just do black. Okay. So I'm having my non-Bob Ross. Bob Ross is certain. No, Jesus Christ, that's not even better. Okay, so let's try red. Potential for rewards and costs. Yeah, I like red. Okay. All right, rewards and costs. Okay, so let me delete that. Okay. Now, potential for rewards and costs. So what are we talking about? Okay, so one of the ideas of uncertainty reduction theory is that we're going to be driven to reduce uncertainty about someone if we think that there's potential for rewards, okay? Or at least if the rewards outweigh the costs. So there could be costs, but as long as the rewards outweigh, then we'll do it. So there has to be something for us to gain for us to get to know someone. So, for example, if you sit on the bus, if you go on like the Austin Metro Link or whatever, you might sit next to somebody, like a stranger on the bus, but you may not be driven to reduce uncertainty about that person because there's no reward in getting to know the person that sits next to you on the bus. Now, I would argue that like there is actually reward in getting to know someone, and you should, but that's a whole other lecture. But that's the reason why, well, how come we don't reduce uncertainty with everybody? Well, because sometimes we don't perceive the reward. But secondly, another condition for reducing uncertainty is if there's deviations from expected behavior. So this goes back to EVT, so you can start seeing how this all kind of ties back. If someone does something strange or out of the ordinary, we might be inclined to reduce uncertainty about it. So we might be then wanting to ask about it or ask why they're doing something or start to come up with little theories in our head about why did somebody do this unexpected behavior. And thirdly, another sort of catalyst for reducing uncertainty, and this one's popular, possibility of future interaction. So let's say you're sitting on the bus on the Metro Link, and the person that you sat next to this time is somebody who you see on the bus all the time. You actually might be inclined to reduce uncertainty now because you have a possibility for future interaction. Or if, let's say you have a lab you meet your classmate for the first time. Because you know you're going to be spending a semester together, you might be inclined to reduce uncertainty about that classmate because maybe they're your table partner and you're going to be seeing them for the next 16 weeks, and you want to prepare for future interactions. So these are three common conditions, or catalysts, if you will, that cause us to reduce uncertainty. Now, there are three ways that we can go about reducing uncertainty. The first way is called passive uncertainty reduction. And here, we observe the person either in a situation where the person is less likely to be self-monitoring, like in a place where like maybe they're at a bar or at a football game, somewhere where their guard is down, and we kind of see how they act. So you can sort of think of passive uncertainty reduction as kind of like observation or surveillance. So just kind of watching the person from a distance. And what you might do is like, you might watch them in a formal setting where there is high self-monitoring. So when I use the term self-monitoring is basically you controlling your behavior and being very aware of what other people are doing and what people think of you. So there are situations where you're going to be a high self-monitor, like in a job interview, you might be very, very careful about what you say and how people perceive you. But then there might be situations where you might be a low self-monitor, maybe when you're at a bar or you're at your house or whatever. So the idea of passive uncertainty reduction is you observe people in situations where they're maybe in a high self-monitor, but also when they're in low self-monitoring situations. Now, uncertainty reduction theory came out before the invention of the internet. So a lot of you probably have used passive uncertainty reduction in a lot of creative ways on the internet. So very possibly you have Googled someone, right? You have looked up somebody on Facebook, and then you looked at their profiles, and you're like, oh, that's how Mary really acts on her Facebook, okay? And then you go to her Instagram, and you do all this social media search. That's all passive uncertainty reduction. Now, the next type of uncertainty reduction is active uncertainty reduction strategies. Now, active strategies involve asking other people about the person. So active uncertainty reduction is all about asking others. So we try to, ask others, like a third party, like, hey, what do you think of this person? Or what we might do, not just asking others, we set up situations. We set up situations or tests, okay? We set up tests. So how does this work? Okay, so a way you might actively reduce uncertainty about how somebody feels about you is you'll come up with a secret test. And if they pass the test, then you'll know that they're interested or they're not interested. Example, maybe you and a classmate hit it off, okay? And you and your classmate both have to go to some event for extra credit. Maybe you have to watch some speaker. So you arrive to the event by yourself and you leave an empty seat right next to you. So then you see the person, your classmate friend, walk into the room, and there's your secret test. Do they sit next to you in the empty seat that clearly could be for them? Or do they just wave at you and then they just keep walking? Okay, that might be a secret test that you've come up with. And then if they sit next to you, you're like, oh, yay, the person likes me, and then all that stuff, okay? But there's all kinds of secret tests that you can come up with. And I'm sure a lot of you have them that you use on your friends and your partner and your family and all those things. Next, we have interactive uncertainty reduction. And interactive uncertainty reduction is just talking to the person, okay? You talk to the person. You ask them and say, how do you feel about me? Or what do you like about this? Or what would you do in this situation? You just talk to the person. That's interactive uncertainty reduction. So if you're doing the coffee conversations, which hopefully you are if you're in my class, then you'll be doing exactly this, interactive uncertainty reduction and getting to know someone. Now, there are some axioms of uncertainty reduction theory, and axioms are basically like these predictions that are just embedded in the theory. And you can pause the video and read through each of these, but the idea is like usually inverse relationships between communication and uncertainty. I would say that like these are little arrows. I know they look bad, but it's basically inverse relationships between communication and uncertainty. The more communication there is, the less uncertainty there is. So go ahead and pause the video, read through these, and then this will kind of help you see what some predictions are from uncertainty reduction theory. There are actually like 25 predictions, but these are like the essential 7, and then there's other predictions that build off these. Now here's the thing, and so I'm showing you this theory, but then I'm also going to tell you kind of my thought on it too. I think it has some good ideas and some good intention behind it, but here's the thing. Does communication always decrease uncertainty. For example, if we look at number 1, as verbal communication increases, uncertainty decreases. Okay, but couldn't you have someone, and maybe you've had this situation before, where you had a friend who said something incredibly weird or something that you just didn't expect, and it actually made you less certain about them because they said this really strange thing, and then actually them talking actually made you less certain? And certainly there can be cases where our communication actually caused us to not like someone. Maybe you discovered some specific information about your partner and that made you think less of your partner. And actually you like your partner less now because you learned something about them. So certainly as verbal communication increases, it doesn't necessarily increase uncertainty. And increases in uncertainty doesn't necessarily decrease liking either. Some people really like the mysterious person who you kind of don't know a lot about and enjoy not knowing things about them. So if we were to go off the rails a little bit here and talk about more theories. So I'm just giving you a quick taste here. There's another theory called uncertainty management theory. And uncertainty management theory says there's actually a level of uncertainty that we like to have. See, URT, uncertainty reduction theory, kind of says uncertainty should be decreased at all times. Uncertainty, decrease. We try to decrease. Uncertainty management says that uncertainty is sometimes good. Uncertainty managed, not necessarily decreased. Here's the idea. There are some things that I don't ever want to know about my students. Like, I don't want to know too much about their, personal lives, their drinking habits. There's things that I just would rather not know. Okay? There are things that you would probably not want to know about me either, right? And if I told you, you'd be like, TMI, TMI. Okay, so there are certainly things where we just prefer not to know. And this can even go as far as, and the whole theory of uncertainty management came from the medical context. There are some patients who don't want to know the results of their tests, whether it's HIV or cancer. They would rather not know, okay? Because knowing would destroy them, essentially. So they prefer to manage uncertainty and not know certain things. So there is kind of a bias then in uncertainty reduction theory where it's kind of saying uncertainty is always bad. Whereas I think more people today are kind of more, there's actually some uncertainty we still like to have in certain situations, but there is sometimes where we want certainty about some things. So hence we manage it. In any case, uncertainty reduction theory is definitely critical to a lot of the other theories that we're going to talk about, because they all rest on the assumption that part of relationship development lies in reducing uncertainty to some degree about your partner and about your beliefs and attitudes about yourself towards your partner. So the next lecture will be on social exchange theories, and we'll talk about how those tie into uncertainty reduction theory in the next video.